Coming up, a tornado did touch down in one eastern Kentucky county yesterday.
Dedicated to eastern and southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News at 11.
Good evening, I'm Steve Hensley. The National Weather Service says a tornado touched down in Lawrence County yesterday. Officials say it was an EF1 with peak winds around 100 miles per hour. This is a look at some of the damage it caused around Louisa. The tornado was on the ground for around 6 miles, starting near Yatesville Lake State Park. Alex Jackson has more on today's cleanup efforts.
A powerful storm ripping through parts of Louisa Monday afternoon. Crews now left assessing the damage.
So basically we're trying to survey out the whole field.
Lawrence County Deputy Emergency Management Director Denver Chafin says crews have been surveying the hardest hit areas, like Birch Road, which saw a tree crush a portion of a house. The cleanup process started last night. Chafin says many of the roads are back open and power has been mostly restored. Today, help is being sought out for people whose homes were in the line of the storm.
We're reaching out to the agencies that we normally deal with storms, and they have been very helpful in getting individuals in here quick and stuff to start the cleanup process and the assessment process for the claims for insurance for the various homes that were damaged.
Crews flying drones over the hardest hit areas to speed up the assessment process.
Instead of having to use multiple individuals surveying it, I mean, we can use one drone, and we have the capability of taking photos from that and also live footage that we can actually go back and review.
Though the process is taxing, Chafin says there is still a lot to be thankful for.
And we had no injuries whatsoever, but we're fortunate that we had the resources that we were able to hit the scene very quickly after the wind damage and worked with other agencies such as Red Cross to help individuals that needed temporary shelter because of damages to their home.
Alex Jackson, WSAZ News Channel 3, Louisa.
The National Weather Service says the tornado was 400 yards wide and was on the ground around 10 minutes before crossing US 23 and the Big Sandy River just north of Louisa before continuing into West Virginia, where it ended in Fort Gay.
Well, for the first time in a couple of days, we are completely dry across the mountains as we go into tonight. Enjoy it, because that will change as we go into tomorrow. Here's a look right now, though, at Buffalo Mountain. And as you can see, we are tracking some dense fog at this hour, so you may need some extra time if you walk out the door tonight. Also early on Wednesday, that current temperature very comfortable, 64 degrees. Feels more like September than August on this Tuesday night. Here's a look at the radar. And as you can see, we are dry under that partly cloudy sky, and that will continue as we go into tonight as well. Those temperatures, they fall into the middle and lower 60s as you wake up on Wednesday, possibly some upper 50s in those cooler pockets. And again, watching out for the potential for some dense fog in some areas early on Wednesday. So there's your first alert. You may need some extra time as you walk out the door, but most of us are dry for the first half of Wednesday. But we are tracking some showers by Wednesday night, also into Thursday, and those temperatures a little bit warmer in the middle 80s. But we're back possibly close to 90 by this weekend. Those details coming up in just a few minutes. Steve?
All right, Cameron, thank you. 2 people are dead after a crash in Laurel County. It happened just before 3 this afternoon, about 5 miles west of London on East Laurel Road, or Kentucky 80. The sheriff's office identified the victims as 30-year-old Brittany Smallwood and 30-year-old Ethan Taylor, both of London. They say the 2 were traveling in opposite directions when they hit head-on. Both vehicles burst into flames. They were the only people in their vehicles. The mother charged in connection with the death of her 17-month-old toddler was in court today. Erica Lawson waived her preliminary hearing in Bell County, so the case is going to a grand jury. Lawson is being held at the Bell County Detention Center on a $1 million bond.
From this point on, usually it gets to the grand jury in 3 to 4 weeks. Then the case will take, several months upstairs in circuit court, depending on several factors. Also, the investigation is ongoing, so there could potentially be additional charges or other defendants named as well.
The Commonwealth's attorney says she's hopeful the grand jury will indict Lawson this month. In Harlan County, a man is accused of stealing from a dead man. Last Friday, Harlan County deputies served an indictment to Austin Barga. It's alleged that around 5 hours after the man died of natural causes, Barga burglarized his property and stole an ATV. Sheriff's deputies found the ATV the next day and opened the investigation. Barga is in jail facing burglary and receiving stolen property charges. Despite continued issues with water, Yeatus community members in Leslie County are hoping to stay in the area. Folks are having to get water in jugs from other places in the county as their water continues to come out with an orange color. Scotty Shepard, who lives in Yeatus, says even with the water conditions, they are doing everything they can to stay there.
I've been here all my life, right there. I just like it, it's peaceful and quiet back in here, and there ain't a lot of noise and that right there. And, I just like being back in here,
Shepard says they have sent a petition to county leaders, but they still have not found any solutions. Governor Andy Beshear visited Floyd County today, announcing the next step in the final phase of the Mountain Parkway expansion. Team Kentucky announced the winning bid for the construction of the final piece of the Parkway, Bizak Construction Company. Governor Beshear says the local company completing the work will soon provide a game-changing opportunity for the region.
Obviously, the easier it is to get to different parts of Kentucky, the more tourists that we'll see. But it also help more people fall in love with Eastern Kentucky, move to Eastern Kentucky, and bring businesses.
Governor Beshear says the promise to Kentuckians made more than 60 years ago is now finally coming to fruition. If you think you've seen a lot of ads about the Kentucky governor's race, you're right. Nearly $15 million has already been spent by the candidates and groups involved in the race. That's far higher than 2019, when total spending was about $24 million. One of the latest is an attack ad from a Democratic-aligned group going after Republican nominee for Governor Daniel Cameron. It attempts to tie Cameron to former Governor Matt Bevin, who lost the 2019 race to now Democratic Governor Andy Beshear. The Cameron campaign responded to the ad this afternoon, calling it, quote, another negative ad from a liberal group. And the Cameron camp also used its response to being tied to Bevin to tie Beshear to President Biden. Ohio voters rejected a Republican-backed measure tonight that would have made it more difficult to change the state's constitution. The defeat of Issue 1 keeps in place a simple majority threshold for passing future constitutional amendments. It would have raised that to a 60% supermajority, which supporters said would protect the state's foundational document from outside interest groups. Republicans placed the question on the summer ballot in hopes of undercutting a citizen initiative voters will decide in November that seeks to enshrine abortion rights in the state. A divided Supreme Court sided with the Biden administration's crackdown on so-called ghost guns that are difficult to trace. CBS's Christian Benavidez reports from Miami.
Law enforcement officials say ghost guns have increasingly been turning up at crime scenes nationwide. They can be bought online, some made with a 3D printer, and most don't carry serial numbers, making them harder to track. On Tuesday, the Supreme Court handed a temporary victory to the Biden administration's efforts to rein them in. The justices voted 5-4 to reinstate regulations that were introduced last summer but invalidated by a federal judge in Texas.
These guns are weapons of choice for many criminals. We're going to do everything we can to deprive them of that choice.
The rules will be in effect while the battle goes to the federal appeals court and potentially the Supreme Court. ATF figures show the number of ghost guns recovered more than doubled from 2020 to 2021. Police say it's led to violent crime like this incident in New York last month when a 25-year-old man on a scooter allegedly shot up 6 locations across the city using a ghost gun. Baltimore Mayor Brandon Scott, whose city has sued one of the biggest ghost gun manufacturers, spoke after a deadly block party shooting last month.
It should not be easier for a young person to go online and order a ghost gun than it is for me to get some Claritin D from my local neighborhood pharmacy.
As the Supreme Court weighed in, Connecticut Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal reintroduced legislation to ban ghost guns.
There is no valid purpose for anybody to have a ghost gun except to evade the law or commit a crime.
The Biden administration rules changed the definition of a firearm under federal law to include unfinished parts so they can be tracked more easily. Cristian Benavides, CBS News, Miami.
The White House issued a statement saying in part it will continue to use every tool available to stop gun violence in our country and repeat our call to Congress to take swift action to save lives. Police in Alabama have charged 3 white men with misdemeanor assault for allegedly attacking the black co-captain of a riverboat. Video of the Saturday incident at Montgomery's riverfront has gone viral on social media. Police say it started when the co-captain tried to get the men to move a private pontoon boat from a dock spot reserved for a much larger riverboat called the Harriet II so those passengers could disembark. After a heated argument, the brawl broke out, with others in the area coming to the aid of the co-captain. Police say more charges are likely. Americans' credit card debt has hit a record high. According to data from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, Americans' credit card debt surpassed $1 trillion in the second quarter for the first time ever. The New York Federal Reserve data shows credit card balances have risen for 5 consecutive quarters and increased by some of the steepest rates in 2 decades. Coming up on Mountain News at 11, another flood victim gets a new home more than 1 year later. And before students head back to class, teachers in one district got to have a little fun together.
Plus, we are dry tonight, but we are tracking some changes as early as tomorrow. Those details after this break.